we're finding that with our data, both third-party independent study as well as survey data, that when kids get Bible education during school hours, their character improves, their attitude improves, their decisions improve. And it's like everyone knew that would be the case.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Narrative Podcast with Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, and David Mahan. Fellas, it's good to be back with you indoors for a change.
Right? Yeah, that was fun though. I'd do that again, man.
That was
doing
a great environment.
The outdoor podcast, man. That was the
best idea I've ever had. I like to say.
Actually, I think that actually might be the best idea Troy ever had. In all legitimacy, that like it was actually his idea.
It's not possible. It's not possible. Can't happen.
Yeah.
Well, your word against his, David, and we'll settle that later. But it's been a while since we've actually sat down.
Yeah.
I won't say in the studio because we're still not there yet.
Still not in the studio.
Our longtime listeners know we got construction going on. There was literally construction during the interview we just recorded.
Wow, yeah,
but
the lights were going on and off. The hammers were going on. But
that's for another week. But we're excited to be back together. Some big news this week, international news. The long-awaited peace deal between Israel and Hamas at least started moving toward completion with the release of the Israeli hostages, the remaining hostages. I believe it was on Monday that came out.
Yeah.
Just a long overdue, more than 2 years after the October 7th attack of 2023, and hopefully bringing some peace and stability into that region.
Yeah, I think it's one. I did not know if this day was ever going to come. Right, it felt like this was just going to be a endless downward spiral, and I mean, 251 hostages were taken. So many of them died in captivity. These were the last 20. I think it's worth noting the sad and horrific reality that the only 20 remaining hostages that were alive were all men. So just imagine what that meant for the women that were held in captivity, but at the same time, I mean, this is such a unbelievably joyous time. My friends in Israel, the people we know there, are just. It feels like a new day. This was literally done because of President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's strength. That's their ability to both decimate Hamas and Hezbollah and hold fast to really their strength and not get bullied or coward.
And check
Iran and all of these things like and honestly, credit to the Israeli government for when they attacked Hamas when they were in Qatar, right? There were all of these things that were done that just sent the message to the Muslim countries that we're not messing around, right? And there will be, there will be no peace here as long as you're holding our people hostage. It really is a credit to their strength and their commitment to protecting Israel and getting to peace. You listen to the people who really know Israel and understand the long history between the relations between Israel and the surrounding countries. And this does feel like a turning point in so many ways because, one, you had Hezbollah and Hamas propped up by the threat of a nuclear Iran for so long that kept Israel on its toes. And that's no longer the same threat that it was. But also, too, the people in Gaza are more and more starting to turn on Hamas, which is why you now see Hamas lashing out and getting more violent with actual Gazans. But it is a moment like I don't think we've ever seen in our lifetime where Israel might find itself in a place with peace with its neighbors for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, really interested to see what happens, with the Egyptians. What are they going to do? Some of the, the Saudis, what is that partnership going to look like? But I will say I'm concerned that, and as I'm sure everybody is. I mean, we could celebrate with the Jewish people, and we could celebrate with what Trump has been able to accomplish just in this short period of time that he's been in office, not just with this war, but other conflicts across the world. But when you look at the 20 hostages that were released, and the deceased ones, in addition to that, compared to the 1,900 prisoners that were released, I think of, the architect of this whole massacre that took place was a released, he was a result of a released hostage thing, a hostage release situation. And so I'm concerned that, with all of the Gazans coming back into, the Strip, we're hearing that, they're already trying to, coerce them into another militant type movement. And then 1,900, I mean, you just gave them another army. But yet we're so encouraged that we have a lasting peace. I would hope so. But I'm just hesitant to.
Well, I think there's a few different things at play here. I think one, there needs to be a reckoning with, and this is the hardest part of any time we say lasting peace, is the militant nature of Islam, right? So I think that's the biggest concern about, can we get a lasting peace? It's what makes the negotiations between Israel and even the idea of a Palestinian state. What makes those things so impossible is Israel has tried multiple times land for peace, but you can't negotiate when you say, I will give you this land if you let us exist, and their counteroffer is, you don't get to exist.
Right.
Right. This is the fundamental nature of how radical Hamas is, and even these idiots on college campus. I'm sorry, there's no other thing to call them. Idiots on college campuses that call for that support Hamas. Right? Is that they are Hamas literally wants to annihilate anybody that is not a Muslim. Right? I mean, this is what their worldview calls for. It's the reason why they are so violent. It's the thing I posted about this on X, but we had the minorest, weirdest vandalism during the summit, where somebody had written trans rights are human rights, and then they wrote free Gaza on there, which is like, you understand how dumb that is, right? Like, go write trans right our human rights in Gaza, and see what happens to you, right? But so we don't understand this ideology. However, what I think is most important is that Israel has been able to, over the decades, get some of these Muslim countries to back down and at least coexist, right? So you think about, you mentioned Egypt. Egypt has tried to wipe Israel off the map. They went after it a few times. They failed. They ended up making peace, right? Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, all of these countries at one point or another have made moves to annihilate Israel. Israel has pushed them back and defeated them in such a profound fashion that it has created an environment where they said, okay, it's just not worth it to go after that anymore. I think the end result is going to be what type of environment is created in Gaza that would allow, we just can't have a series of endless tunnels. I think that, to me, the thing that's most concerning is, my understanding is only about 30 to 40% of the tunnels under Gaza were completely destroyed. So my hope is, I know that's a part of the negotiations in phase 2, is will Israel get to go in and finish the destruction of those underground tunnels, which will necessarily mean in the short term more sort of infrastructure damage to Gaza. But I think annihilating those capabilities to attack Israel and just setting up that circumstance where, listen, it's just not worth the cost anymore to continue this, will hopefully get us to a point where there's a longer term peace that will be there. Again, I think the spiritual dynamic of this we can't overlook. The enemy of this world cannot tolerate the people through which the Savior of the world came from. And so, unfortunately, I don't think this type of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism is going away anytime soon. But I do have hope that this is going to be a longer term, a longer term season of peace for Israel and the Jewish people than maybe we've seen in a while.
Yeah, it's still unfolding. Obviously, still details to be worked out. We've had some episodes over the past couple of years with people on the ground in Israel, Michael Mastretta and Daniel Gordis. Encourage you to go back and listen to those to kind of get a reminder of where things stood from their perspective. And we're going to try and still talk to somebody who's there, maybe one of those guys again, or somebody else who's done some reporting from there, just to get that sense of on the ground and what's actually going on in Israel with the prospect of this peace deal.
Thank God that we are where we are today.
Yeah,
amen.
Jesus.
Amen. Well, coming a little closer to home as we look at some Ohio news, there's been a couple of pieces of legislation that we've talked about here on the podcast, and one was the Pornhub bill to get age verification required for any adult websites. That was part of our state budget, and then we found out maybe 10 days ago or so that Pornhub said, "Oh, that law doesn't apply to us," right. And they decided, "Nope, we're not going to follow it. We're still here." Went to the Attorney General. So, David, just kind of give us an update of where things are from what you know.
Yeah, they kick and scream in just about every state before they eventually leave. But basically, they said that there is some sort of loophole that says that we get to basically share pornography and obscene materials to children, and Yost said not so. Of the 20 organizations that was cited by the AG's office, one of them has complied so far, and he's saying if one can comply, all of you can comply. And so this is a battle that is ensuing. If there is some sort of loophole, it's easily fixed. If we just need to litigate this thing, but I think the bigger picture here is it's showing Ohioans that this is not just about people's ability to watch porn. This is about an addiction for profit industry that is targeting children, and they are fighting tooth and nail to do so.
Yeah, because they can create customers younger
That's
if
right.
they get their hooks in sooner, and that's really what this boils down to in a lot of ways. And what are we up to now? 24 or so
Somewhere in
states
there. Yep.
that have passed this law,
I
and
believe we'd be 25.
Yeah, and so Pornhub has had no problems leading those other ones. So whether or not there's some kind of language or something that needs to be tweaked, we've said it before. Elections matter, and when you elect an attorney general like Dave Yost, who's willing to fight stuff like this, that's big for the state of Ohio.
Huge. Yeah, no, all the credit to Dave for
Absolutely
for stepping in. And again, with no question, right? That there's attorney generals that you kind of have to be like, come on, man, let's get in the fight. And then there's people like Dave Yost who are jumping in right in there to protect
true champion.
Yep.
Another addiction for profit industry that's not going quietly after some Ohio news is the intoxicating hemp industry. Governor DeWine had passed a ban on products like gummies and drinks that contain THC being sold, and now that's being challenged in court. And with that being the case, those products are still available. And Dave, you can get on your soapbox and go on your white collar dope dealer rant all you want, or however you want to approach this, but just frustrating that this is still happening in Ohio.
Yeah, well, we do have Senator Steve Huffman does have a bill, SB, I believe 86, that deals with intoxicating. This is going to get dealt with. I mean, you've got, the governor wants to do it. The will of the entire state legislature wants to get this done. Again, that was a loophole, right, from the farm bill that was passed, I think in 2019 or so. And then the SB 8, or I'm sorry, the Delta 8 is just a perversion of the THC out of the hemp product that is completely unregulated right now. It can be in gas stations. Kids can go in there right now in your neighborhood and pick up some Delta 8 products, which can really be just as intoxicating and dangerous as Delta 9. Again, this is just a big chemistry experiment. If you've got a lab, you can do anything you want with extracting THC from hemp, like is going on right now. And so I honestly, I haven't gone too deep into the court case there, but I am fairly encouraged that we're going to get this done by the end of the General Assembly.
Well, I think Mike DeWine deserves a lot of credit on what he did here, because David and I have seen this game that the lobbyists play around the State House all the time, right? Since 2023, when the initiated statute was passed to legalize recreational marijuana, there's been a broad conversation of, okay, this, because the voters passed it, we know the General Assembly didn't feel right about repealing it right away.
It's ridiculous,
right? Which to me is we disagreed with that. We think, hey, you guys, it was an initiated statute, not a constitutional amendment, which means you guys are the duly elected officials of Ohio. You can repeal this. You should repeal this. This is bad for our kids, right? We should not stand by and allow bad things to happen to our kids. But, okay, let's say you don't want to completely repeal it. Let's say you at least know we need to regulate this and pull this back, because what was passed had a lot of things in there that most voters wouldn't realize. Things like we're going to, and I appreciate the way the governor did the press conference where he held up a thing of nerds and then a thing of nerdies. And the nerdies are the weed
two other
laced
people on this podcast.
I think that's the first time I struck David on the podcast. Sorry about that.
It's not video. There's no proof.
Exactly, right? But yeah, so like he just showing this is what, and I don't think people voted for that kind of thing. But what the lobbyists have done so well over the last really 2 years since this was passed is they've paralyzed the State House. By bringing, well, let's just tweak this, or now let's not go this far. Let's go to 90% of this or 70% of this, and we'll come to the table. Let's have an interested party. This is the classic lobbyist game that we've seen, which we need another interested party hearing. Let's have some more committee hearings and all that, and dragged it out. And by issuing this executive order, this 90-day executive order to ban these products, Mike DeWine has really spurred activity at the Ohio State House to try to get some things done. I still think you're going to see the lobbyists doing everything they can to drag this thing down and slow it down. So some aggressive action is going to need to be taken. But I honestly do. And this was blocked in a Franklin County court. Of course, they go to the most liberal county court.
Shocking.
But I think more than anything, what Mike DeWine did, the service he did here was really saying, hey, we need to take action here. We can't be sitting back. And so credit to him.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep you posted on any developments with that issue. And I know we've got some movement across the street now that the legislator's back, and hopefully we'll have some updates next week about some CCV priority bills and things like that. So keep it tuned into the narrative for that. We're going to transition to our interview now, and this is one that we did a couple weeks ago. We had actually an in-person guest. It's been a while since we had one of those, but Joel,
a large in-person guest.
Yes, Joel Penton from
the high ceiling rooms.
LifeWise executive director Joel Penton stopped by, and they've got a movie coming out.
Like next week.
Next Thursday. You can actually go to the movie theater and hear the LifeWise story, and David is smirking like he's got something to say.
Did he just call Joel Penton fat?
No, I didn't call him fat. I called him large.
You called him tall.
He's a football player. He's
rude,
a big dude.
Man. I want him written up.
Well, go talk to HR. Get in line.
That's right.
Sure if there's any paper left in the complaint box, you can file. How about that? So you're going to learn more about the LifeWise documentary. It's an exciting time for them. We were grateful to have Joel in the building to talk about it, and you can hear that interview next on The Narrative. Hey, Narrative listeners. Christians in the marketplace today face more unique and challenging threats than ever before. Businesses are following woke capitalism, chambers of commerce are beholden to social justice, and secular activists are chipping away Christians' First Amendment rights. As Ohio's only Christian chamber of commerce, the Christian Business Partnership stands in the gap to advocate for, to educate, and to celebrate Christian business owners. Joining the partnership also allows businesses to provide their employees with healthcare insurance, workers' compensation, and exclusive banking and educational discounts. To find out more and to join, go to cbpohio.org. That's cbpohio.org. Welcome back to The Narrative. Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, David Mahan. We've got a rare pleasure today. We actually have an in-person guest here.
People do want to come see us around
at
here.
CCB headquarters. We're joined by Joel Penton, founder and CEO of LifeWise Academy. It's a program that provides Bible education to public school students during school hours. But one thing that's not listed on here is movie star. Like, isn't that something that's coming up?
I don't know if I qualify.
No.
You're going to get an IMDb page out of this, right?
That'd be fun.
It's going to be in movie theater. We're going to talk about that. But I'd be remiss, Joel, if I didn't at least ask you. I'm 95% sure most of our listeners know about LifeWise, but give us the elevator pitch about what it is you do at LifeWise Academy.
Absolutely. And let me say, if your listeners don't know about LifeWise, you guys have not been doing your job.
we have
I'd be
talked
very
about
upset.
That was good.
I would be hurt. LifeWise, we provide Bible education for public school students during school hours. We do so under little-known laws and a little-known Supreme Court ruling from 1952. What everyone's aware of is that decades ago, the Bible was systematically removed from the public school day. What few people realize is that the Supreme Court says public school students can, in fact, receive Bible education during school hours if it's off school property, privately funded, and students have parental permission. And so they ruled on that in 1952. Sadly, while you see release time here and there, it's called release time religious instruction. You've seen it here and there over the last several decades. It has not been very popular. And so what we're trying to do is popularize this strategy to provide Bible education during school hours. We provide a plug-and-play program that any community can implement, and it's really starting to take off.
Yeah, I know. In my town up in Mount Vernon, we see lots of LifeWise signs. We've got a couple different campuses up there. So what's the growth like statewide? What are we looking at in Ohio as far as LifeWise Academy availability?
Yeah, in the state of Ohio, it's gone pretty fast. So we launched in 2019 our first 2 programs in the state. We set the goal to serve 25 schools by 2025. This year will be in more than 1,100 schools in probably the fall of, we'll be over 1,000. And
so you reached that goal, you're saying.
We eclipsed the goal.
That's good.
Just
25.
barely.
Just got over the line there.
Scraped past the goal.
And that is across 34 states. But the state where we are most prevalent is the state of Ohio. In fact, we are confirmed now in almost exactly half of the school districts across the state. Many of those have already gone live. The rest will surely be live. The rest of that half will be live this school year. But among the other half, we have a local movement that's trying to get it started in, I think I can say, nearly every other school district across the state.
That's awesome. I want to, before we get to kind of where things are today and all that's going on with LifeWise, I want to go back to that founding of it, because today, especially for those of us who have been tracking LifeWise, it seems so obvious. Why wouldn't there's no reason a school wouldn't do this, right? Just making the option available to families there that want to choose to do this.
Right.
But I remember when I was a kid growing up in Warren, there were the Jewish kids that would leave for Hebrew school. There were the Greek kids that would leave for Greek school, and they would be gone for an hour or so and come back. When I was in Arizona, there were the LDS kids, the Mormon kids that would they'd go down to the temple that was very strategically located right next to the school. Why do you feel like this very good idea wasn't being tapped into for so long? Like one, what did you think when you first came across this? But also, why wasn't this being tapped into?
I think it's a variety of factors. And I write about this in our book, During School Hours. I won't run through all of it. I mean, I do think it's a mix of things. But one is that you just mentioned the Jewish community, maybe the Orthodox community. They're in where I'm from in Northwest Ohio. There are some towns that are predominantly Catholic towns, and like you'll see one steeple in this little church, in this little town, and it's the Catholic church. You mentioned the Mormon communities. In those communities where there's one primary religious entity, and it's particularly in those denominations or in those sects, that have unity and infrastructure, is where you have seen release time over the last decades. For example, the Jewish community in New York, they have Jewish Hour. And you mentioned the Mormon community. Nearly every town out in Utah, right, does release time. But you haven't seen it in the towns, which is most towns and cities that are predominantly Protestant. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's for two reasons. Number one, there hasn't been unity, right? The churches, there's all sorts of different churches. They don't agree on everything. Mm-hmm. And so they can't get together on projects like this.
Well, that's these guys. He's a Baptist and David's Pentecostal, and they don't talk most off of the podcast.
This is all forced
the referee
interaction
exactly.
right
now.
Yeah.
So you have the lack of unity, but then you combine that with the collective sense of we own the culture, meaning people have a sense that this is a Protestant country, and so our public schools have these values baked in, and we don't need this type of thing. But then the minority groups that have the unity, like the Catholic Church or like the Jewish, they say, we want to take advantage of this because we know that we need to bake this into our kids' education. And the Protestants, and I'm a Protestant, just have been wrong. for decades, right? Like assuming, we own this culture, we own this, that just hasn't been the case. Maybe it was at some point, and so we are just now. So I think that explains why you hadn't seen it. Why you're seeing so much open to it now is I think there's some realization, right? There's a realization people are looking around saying, "Oh my goodness, what is happening? We really don't own this culture." And because of that, there's an openness to unity. I've been in full-time ministry now for over 15 years, and I've never seen the willingness of Protestant Christian churches to say, hey, whether we're sprinkling people or dunking people, whether, we got to get together on some of these key things or it's lost.
It was amazing, Joe, working over at the State House. Everybody knew. They heard of LifeWise, but they didn't really know what you did, how you did it. Yeah, I don't know, Dave, about, preaching the gospel in schools. And I'm like, well, kind of it's off campus, right? But they couldn't get their arms around it. And then some of them thought it was like controversial, program discontinued in Westerville School District after so and so many years. And so one of my biggest joys over there was just breaking down some of the data you have around, okay, what are the attitudes of the teachers, not the kids, right? But what are the teachers saying? 90% of the teachers are not just saying that, the program is great, but it's having a beautiful impact on behavior, having a beautiful impact on attendance, on the attitudes and future orientation of these kids. And then also the 99% of parents. So, he just mentioned, family, all of the schools that they're in across the state. But when you look at all of those schools that they're in, those schools represent teachers. They represent, hundreds of parents, right? And 99% of those parents, are you seeing these numbers across the country, or is this just an Ohio phenomenon, this controversial program?
We're seeing it everywhere. Yeah, controversial. Manufactured controversy. We're seeing it everywhere. And one of the greatest joys I have is how obvious this is, right? We're finding that with our data, both third-party independent study as well as survey data, that when kids get Bible education during school hours, their character improves, their attitude improves, their decisions improve. And it's like, everyone knew that would be the case. No one is surprised by this, right? Principals aren't surprised. Teachers aren't surprised. Parents aren't surprised. Every single one of them knew, if a kid could go get some Bible study, that'd be good for them. And so now we just have the hard data, and it does make it hard for opponents who are opposing this on purely ideological basis. It makes it hard for them to make a case when kids getting Bible, kids getting character education is having really great fruit that everybody loves.
Well, I do have to ask you. So I did mention Westerville, right? So in Westerville, you weren't, and now you're back. You are back in there. What happened? Can you explain that situation?
Westerville got a bill passed.
Okay. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we approached Westerville years ago, as we have with schools all over the state, and said, hey, here's what we'd like to do. It's optional. We explain what it is. And most administrators, in fact, at one point it was 90% of them, when they saw it, they thought, this is a no-brainer.
Right.
Entirely optional. The law is very clear. We're allowed to do this. Why would we stand in the way of this type of thing? Westerville responded that same way. So we had 2 years of serving multiple schools, hundreds of kids. And then a group in the community decided, no, we want to go after this. And for ideological reasons, we think parents shouldn't be able to decide for their kids to have Bible education during lunchtime. So kids didn't miss a moment of class. They were dismissed once a week during lunch. So they went to school board meetings. They ginned up this, manufactured controversy, and the board said, okay, we're going to yank the policy. We're going to shut down the program. Hundreds of people showed up at school board meetings to say, please don't do this. There's no reason to do this. No one in the state had ever done that, shut down a program. After multiple meetings of hundreds of people showing up, they shut down the program, and that was really the spark that lit what ultimately took place at the State House of the bill going through, saying now it's a right.
Yeah. No, I want to go back because there's something important that can't be missed here that has come out of our education system. It's not a coincidence, I think, that you see kids have more Bible instruction and academics improve and behavior improves and things like that. We're made with a purpose, made in someone's image, and God's moral law is not just some condemnation on high, but it's actually a playbook for thriving in life. So when you guys are teaching kids these concepts, just talk a little bit about what you're trying to instill in these kids when they're walking in, and what difference that makes in them, or at least the hope of the difference you're trying to see in them.
Yeah. Well, we are teaching the Bible straight up. I mean, in fact, we tend to start with the elementary school kids, typically grades 1 through 5, and we teach straight through the Bible, Genesis through Revelation, over 5 years. And each and every lesson we're tying it to, we talk about head, heart, and hands. Head, what's the story on the page? Heart, how does it connect to the bigger picture story of the gospel message? And so we're talking about Jesus and redemption, God's love every week. And then hands, how does that flesh out in our lives? If we rightly understand God's truth, how does it change what we do? But as we're doing this, what we're really providing students is a biblical worldview. And that's what is scratching the itch that now everybody's having, because we talk about worldview as kind of the hub of a wheel. When kids are being educated, they're getting all the spokes. They're getting, the history and the science and the math, but it all has to be organized and held together to be functional. When you're just providing these pieces of things and it's just swimming around in kids' brains without a cohesive worldview, and particularly a true worldview of God's creation and how all that fits together, is where you start to see a lack of hope and despair. And you think of the 20th century, it's like the best educated century was also the bloodiest century, because you look at communism and taking a biblical worldview away from all of this education is a disaster.
So now let's get to the fun. Go back to all the controversy stuff on all these things, because you guys have been just, especially in local press, and I know some national folks have been coming after you guys more and more. How have you guys navigated all of those criticisms in the press, and what's the number one thing you feel like they come after you guys with? What's the criticism they bring that makes you roll your eyes the most? Like, oh gosh, here we go with this again.
Well, we tend to roll our eyes at all of it. We really lean into people. Somebody's just asked me this: how do you respond to all this opposition, negativity? And we say with clarity, because people who attack what we do are attacking the most basic and simple. I mean, we do optional Bible study for little kids. Like that's what we do. And so people are making it their job to attack a kid's Bible study program that their parents sign them up for. And so what we find is that we can just always be very clear, because we find that when they shine a light on what we're doing, that's good for us. Yeah. It's like, because people, they say, oh, look at that group that's being attacked. I want to read about that. And when the more they read, they're like, I kind of like this group, and I don't really like how these people are attacking them. And so we find it helps us. And so we just be clear, if people want to say something about our safety measures and things, and we're able to talk about how in a public school classroom, the teacher's alone with their students, and we have a policy that there's always at least 2 adults in the room with students. And so that people read that and they say, oh, that's really good. When people say, oh, what are they teaching them? And we're able to say, download our sample curriculum, and you'll notice it's a curriculum used by hundreds of thousands of churches and teaches the basics of the Christian faith. And you can download the whole thing and read it for yourself. People say, oh, that's actually really good. So, if we can just be clear, we'll take the attention all day.
You were touching on right there the system surrounding LifeWise, right? And so, like, if we have pastors, and I know we do out there, that are like, hey, this sounds like a really great opportunity. I know our church out in Pickerington just jumped on board with helping with LifeWise in our community. What is involved with a church or a pastor, getting involved with LifeWise in their community?
Yeah, great question. Well, LifeWise, we talk about really 3 key values, and that is being gospel-centered, excellent, and community-driven. And so in the same way the public school, the community comes together to kind of form the public school, we like to see the Christian community come together to form LifeWise. And so what we're just providing are the tools and resources and templates and infrastructure, but it's the community that makes it happen. And we have a 10-step launch process to get one going. It starts with signatures. We ask for communities through our website, you can find any school district in the nation, and you can sign your name to your local school district interest list, just to say, hey, we would like to see this in our community. And once we have 50 signatures, that signals to us, oh, wow, there's 50 people there that want to do this. Let's start deploying some resources to help the community. And then we walk the community through forming a steering committee representing at least 3 churches. And then the steering committee formulates a plan. They go to the school, yada, yada, yada. We go through this whole process. But what I would really encourage pastors is to consider LifeWise as an excellent strategy for your church. If you're wanting to further disciple the kids in your congregation, if you want to make connections with new families, if you want to be engaged on a deeper level with other churches and the local school, I can't think of a better way than to engage. So have someone from your church on that steering committee, have someone from your church involved in the leadership. If possible, host LifeWise at your church. But it really all starts with first just expressing interest, finding your school district on the website, signing up.
Yeah, it seems to me too, Joel, like this is kind of another doorway in for churches, because sometimes if a kid at school asks a friend to Sunday morning church, maybe there's a little hesitancy there because parents don't fully understand what that experience might be like. But, if they're going to just miss lunch and it's only an hour and teachers are fond of it, like this could be a good opportunity for evangelization for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is a very practical way to connect with kids and thereby connect with families. I mean, it's immensely practical because before and after school programs are wonderful. I was in after school programs, but lots of kids have extracurriculars, they have transportation issues. Even with the weekends being crazy, there are practical limitations by having it during school hours where every child is present and they have the opportunity to sign up, oftentimes during lunchtime or library time or during a specialist time. It's very practical. The stories we hear that roll in literally daily about kids who have no connection to church whatsoever, but are intrigued and ask their parents and get signed up for LifeWise. And then the families getting connected to church. And, yes, as an evangelistic strategy, that's one of the driving reasons we do it.
So, Joel, you and I are around the same age. You're a little older. That's why I have more hair.
Is that why?
That's why. But I'll say, I feel like every generation, as we get older, we all want to have hope that the next generation, that something is moving in them for the future of our country, right? I'll say, I know. I remember, when I was in high school and college, every now and then you'd hear something's happening in this generation. And I'd look around at the millennial generation and be like, nope, no, we don't have it. This is not the generation. I hope that you're not counting on us to pull this one out because I don't see it happening. But we just endured the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and when you look at when you really start talking to people involved with Turning Point USA, you do hear things of special movements happening with the next generation, right? You do see, I think, some fairly tangible signs of again, and there's always the one-off stories of like, oh, this is really powerful, right? Like I think about what happened with OSU last year, right? Like incredible story, and we're gonna have Cam Babb speaking at the summit this year. But you see some broader signs of mass movements. What are you guys seeing with this up and coming generation, and what's your sense for what's happening in the country right now?
Yeah, good question. I am not one to make predictions, and I'm with you on, like, it does seem like every few years you hear about this exciting thing is happening, and I tend to think God is always doing a million different things at the same time, and I don't understand them, and I know in the end he is victorious, and in heaven one day is when we'll get the answers, and it even, I hesitate to, even when something happens, it looks like, oh, that thing that happened a year ago, this is why. I hesitate to even say that, right? Because maybe in 10 years, we'll have, the picture will look different. But what I see happening, there is definitely something in the air. Things are happening, and I pray that they're good. It seems like there's greater extremes, right? The level of evil that we see just out in broad daylight. Yeah. We've never seen anything. We've never seen anything like that. I was talking to somebody last night who's from Eastern Europe, and they said, when I moved here 20 years ago, I'm starting to see things in this country that I thought I had fled. So you see evil waxing, but then you also see these bright shimmers of light. And even in the last week, right? Literally last night, we had an interaction with a guy who said, I never had any interest in faith, but then I saw what happened to Charlie Kirk, and I found myself on the website, and I found myself listening to what he says about Jesus, and I found myself, it's like something, it reminds me of the wheat and the tares. Like, both of these things extremes are growing, and I'm not sure how it's all going to shake out. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, and I'm interested in what you guys think too. But for me, I think the one thing that seems most tangible, and it honestly goes back to what you were saying to start off the pod on, why haven't churches really engaged with things like release time, is there was just a general sense in the culture that this was a predominantly Christian culture. Right. And I think most, faithful Christians today, if you're still thinking that, you're missing something, right? And so I think that, and I'll just even say, tangentially, having done the public policy work at CCV, or through CCV and Center for Arizona Policy for 15 years, when I started in this work, talking to churches about, hey, it's important that we're involved in public policy. It's important that we have a voice in this space. So many churches would say, that's politics. We're out. We're not touching that. And I think now those conversations still happen from time to time, but just generally speaking, more churches are aware of, hey, it's important that we are involved, engaged. There's obvious examples like we just talked about here with release time, right? That hey, if we're not there, then kids can't even choose to use this program, right? If Christians aren't involved in this process, you can't. But it goes further to things like the SAFE Act and banning trans medicine on kids. That general awareness in the church feels very tangible. And then again, I'm hoping that there is something happening in our kids' generation.
Yes.
That also might just be the prayers of a dad, right? That's hoping their kids have it better than they do.
Well, I remember. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that, to your point, one of the things happening, again, there's a million things happening all at once, but one of the things happening is this awareness. So C.S. Lewis said, the danger lies in the illusion that all is well when all is not well. And just the church waking up to the fact that, we got to get together and we got to get moving. That within itself fills us with hope. Because again, LifeWise, obviously I'm number one fan of LifeWise. That's my the organization I lead. But a tool like that really can change the culture. It's not the only thing like it, but you see these communities that the Word of God and the church have been so marginalized. And now, with LifeWise being available, it is changing the culture. Kids are taking their Bibles to school with them, and then when they come back from LifeWise, they're talking about it at lunchtime. Like, it is now being baked in. And I think when people are honest, they would admit that's why people are opposing the work.
That's these. I remember just seeing some of the Westerville stuff, or even some of the the stuff Mahan was dealing over there, and these activists showing up with purple hair and saying, "Well, the school buses. I'm really worried about these school buses and the safety." It's like, that's the reason why.
I was sitting in a hearing. I've been trying to say this from the beginning, and the same activists that showed up for all the gender stuff, it's always the same group, right? And they showed up and they were talking about how kids are being bullied on these elementary school campuses.
That's my favorite.
And I'm like, are you serious? First of all, we see, again, we see the 90% of parents and administrators are like, this is ridiculous. These are great programs, great kids. But here you have, what were you, all the listeners that are listening today, what were you doing at recess in elementary school? I was deconstructing G.I. Joe men, putting them back together and selling them for twice the price to other kids. And I mean, and chasing girls. Who goes to Bible study at recess when they don't have to? Who takes their lunchtime when they could be acting stupid to go and learn about Jesus, and get on a red school bus? That is the bright light for me. Yeah. Right. We've talked about the teachers and the parents and the pastors, but these are kids that are saying, "I want the Word of God." Yeah. And I want to share that.
This kid doesn't even know who Gideon is. Get him.
Let me tell you, that is exactly the kind of bullying that goes on in elementary school.
Which is again with why we just want to respond with clarity, because nobody buys that. Nobody buys that these kids are going to learn about Jesus' love, and then they come home and they come back.
They got their red shirts on, rolling around like gangs coming up.
Take me to the church where there's a thug youth group. I've never seen it.
I just assumed it was your youth group.
By the way, did you file taxes on all that?
Shut up. I do things like that. Every time I try to be,
Well, Joel, I do want to talk with you about this new project that you've got coming up here.
Yeah, we
it's
did
the LifeWise documentary. We teed it up.
That was why we brought you on to talk
back
about
at the beginning of the podcast. But this is exciting stuff. This isn't just like a website documentary. This is going to be in theaters. Yeah. Tell us about what you hope to accomplish by showing this really in hundreds of theaters across the country.
Yeah, well, in one sense, the project of LifeWise is to amplify the message of this opportunity to impact the next generation across the nation. And so we are always looking for ways to do that. So, I wrote a book in an attempt to amplify the message, and we do all sorts of efforts, campaigns and this and that. And so one of the projects we took on was, let's create a documentary. And the Lord was so kind to bring to our team an Emmy-winning filmmaker to head up our creative division. And he said, he just said, I'm going to do a full-length documentary. And I'm telling you, it is of the highest quality, Hollywood quality. We premiered it about a year ago, a version of it at the Museum of the Bible. And it's gone through some private screenings and had such incredible feedback. The documentary itself really traces the influence of really the centrality of the Bible in early American education, and then how the Bible has been systematically removed, and then ultimately this opportunity to reintegrate Bible education through release time, and in particular how LifeWise is doing it. But it has been so well received that we now have an agreement with Fathom Events. There's going to be a one-night release on October 23rd in hundreds of theaters across the country, including many here in Ohio. And then shortly after, it'll go to the Angel Studios platform.
Wow, that is exciting stuff. It's
All right, so if people want to go see this, where do they go find the theaters it's going to be in, all that good stuff?
Yeah, if you go to our website, lifewise.org, on the homepage is the trailer, but then you can go to lifewise.org/off-school-property. That's the name of the movie, lifewise.org/off-school-property. You can see a list of theaters. You can buy tickets.
awesome. Well, Joel, love what you're doing with LifeWise. We'll be praying for the ministry and keep up the great work. Thanks for joining us today on The Narrative.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Narrative, presented by CCV and produced by Wessler Media. If you found today's episode insightful, leave us a review or rating and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. We're your hosts, Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, and David Mahan, and we'll see you next time on The Narrative.